that specific feeling when you finally decide to tackle something big? Maybe it's a thick textbook on, I don't know, game theory, or you sign up for that expensive coding boot camp.
Or you decide, this is the year I finally learn Japanese.
Exactly. You've got the coffee, the fresh notebook, the highlighters are all lined up. You sit down, read the first 3 pages, and just nothing.
It's like hitting a literal wall of fog.
It is. It's not just that it's hard, it's that your brain feels like it's physically kind of sliding off the information.
It just doesn't stick.
It doesn't stick. And almost immediately, that little narrator in your head kicks in, you know the one?
Oh, yeah.
It starts whispering, I'm too old for this, or I'm not smart enough, or my personal favorite, I'm just not a math person.
That internal monologue is incredibly universal. And, frankly, it is the single biggest killer of potential.
Yeah.
We interpret that friction, that mental heaviness, as a signal that we are failing.
But the research we're unpacking today suggests we have that completely backward.
We do.
Yeah.
And that is the mission for this deep dive.
We are looking at a fascinating piece of source material called Why New Knowledge Feels So Hard to Learn. And the big idea here is that the feeling of stupidity you get when learning something new, it isn't a bug in the system.
It's a feature. It's actually necessary.
Right. We are going to debunk a deeply held, almost invisible belief that most of us carry around.
The belief that if you're putting in the effort, the learning process should feel smooth.
The effort equals ease equation. It's this transactional view of our brains. We think, I spent 2 hours studying, so I should feel 2 hours smarter.
And when we don't, when we just feel confused and tired instead, we panic.
We do. And so in this deep dive, we're going to explore why that panic happens, why our intuition about learning is so flawed when it comes to new subjects, and we'll introduce a mental model.
It's called construction versus renovation. And if you really grasp this, it changes everything about how you approach a difficult subject.
Okay, so let's start with the root of the problem. The source material calls it the myth of linear progress. We expect learning to be this straight line up. You put a coin in, you get knowledge out. Where does that come from?
Well, the source points the finger squarely at our education system. I mean, think about it. School is designed around a very specific and very artificial feedback loop.
You're taught something, you practice it for a bit, then you're tested on it.
And speed is usually the primary metric of intelligence in that setting.
Oh, absolutely. I remember being in class, and the kid who shot their hand up first was the smart one, the one sitting there, staring at the ceiling, trying to piece it together.
That was the slow one, exactly. We're conditioned for 12, 16, maybe 20 years to believe that getting it quickly is the definition of aptitude.
So if you struggle, if you have to read the same sentence 5 times, the system basically signals that you're falling behind.
You're penalized for the delay. And so we internalize this idea that fluency, that ability to recall answers smoothly and quickly, is the only valid sign of learning.
Right. But the source makes a crucial distinction here. School tests usually measure recall, not the messy process of actually understanding.
Yes, and because we spent our formative years in that environment, we mix up effortless recall with learning. So when we're 30, trying to learn data science, and it feels messy, we assume something is wrong with us.
The source uses a really heavy phrase here. It talks about the emotional cost. It says difficulty is rarely viewed as neutral data.
That's the key insight. If you're lifting weights and your muscles burn, you see that sensation as neutral. Even positive, you think, okay, it burns, I'm building muscle.
You don't think my biceps are failing me as a person?
Exactly. But mental friction, we see that as a verdict on our identity. When you feel confused, you don't just think, this topic is complex.
You think I am inadequate. It becomes incredibly personal.
Deeply personal. We see the struggle as a lack of preparation or a lack of innate ability. And that emotional weight just makes the whole process 10 times harder.
Because now you're not just trying to understand the material.
You're also fighting off an identity crisis at the same time. You're trying to learn Python while also convincing yourself you aren't an idiot. That's a huge cognitive load.
It really is. But here's where the source gets really interesting. It argues that this belief that effort should lead to smoothness isn't just insecurity. It actually feels logical because of something called the trap of familiarity.
This is the part that really clicked for me. The source acknowledges that for, 90% of what we do in our adult lives, the effort equals smoothness model is actually correct.
Okay, break that down. Why is it right sometimes but wrong here?
Think about the skills you already have, things you do every single day. Typing, driving a car, cooking dinner, your day job.
Okay.
When you apply effort to those things, you get immediate feedback in the form of smoothness. If you focus on typing, you type faster. If you focus on driving, your turns get smoother.
Because the neural pathways are already there. You aren't building the road, you're just driving on it. You're
Yeah.
optimizing.
Precisely. Increased exposure produces fluency. So our brain builds this predictive model. If I try hard, things get easier.
And we take that pattern, which works for familiar skills, and we wrongly apply it to learning something completely new.
Exactly. So we walk into a quantum physics lecture and we think, if I just focus, like I do when I'm typing an email, this should start to flow.
And when it doesn't flow, when the friction stays high no matter how hard you try, that discrepancy creates anxiety.
Right. We think the mechanism is broken, but it's not. We're just using the wrong map for the territory. We're trying to drive a car on a road that hasn't been built yet.
There's another layer to this trap of familiarity, the source mentions, the social illusion.
Oh, absolutely. And it predates social media, but it's gotten so much worse. It's the nature of performance. We generally only see the polished outcomes of other people's learning.
The highlight reel effect.
That's it. You sit in a meeting and your colleague gives this brilliant, concise explanation of a complex strategy. You see the result.
You don't see the 3 weekends they spent staring at a whiteboard feeling like they were drowning.
No. We compare our internal messy footage, all the outtakes, with everyone else's polished final cut. It reinforces the illusion that smart people just get it,
We assume they learned it with ease because we see them doing it with ease.
which is almost never true. But because that struggle is hidden, we feel totally isolated in ours. We think we're the only ones sweating.
So, okay. Our expectations are warped by school, by our daily routines, and by social comparison, but the source goes deeper. It draws this line in the sand between two types of learning. This is the anchors versus the void idea.
This is where we get into the mechanics of why new things actually hurt your brain. The source distinguishes between learning that extends a system and learning that creates a system.
Unpack that, because I think most of us just assume learning is learning. You know, information in, knowledge out.
Okay, imagine you're a history buff. You know everything about World War II, the generals, the dates, the battles. Then you decide to read a book about one specific obscure battle you've never studied.
Okay, so I'm learning new information, technically.
Right, but you already know the players, the geography, the politics. You have anchors. Your brain has a pre-existing framework, a lattice. When you read a new fact, your brain says, this goes on that shelf, or this connects to that person.
It attaches easily. It's like clicking Legos together. It feels satisfying.
Exactly. It's like adding a new room to a house that's already built. The foundation is there. You're just framing a new wall.
That feels like good work, visible progress.
But now imagine you switch to learning astrophysics, or a completely new language with a different alphabet. You have no lattice, no anchors.
That's the void.
That is a void. Your brain is trying to grasp a concept, but there's no hook to hang it on. You aren't adding to a system. You're trying to build the system itself from scratch.
And this is where we misinterpret the signals, because in this void phase, effort does not produce ease.
No. In this phase, effort sustains engagement, but it does not produce clarity. Not yet. You might read a paragraph and understand the words, but you can't hold the concept in your head.
It feels slippery. You grasp it for a second, and then it just dissolves.
And that's the feeling that makes people quit. You put in 4 hours and you feel like you know less than when you started.
Because now you realize how big the void is.
And the learner interprets that lack of coherence as failure. They think, I'm not getting it. But the source clarifies this beautifully. Ease is simply the wrong signal to look for at this stage.
Okay, so this leads us right to the core mental model of the whole thing, the construction versus renovation framework.
This is the unifying theory. If you take one thing away from this deep dive, it should be this distinction. Most of what we call learning in our adult lives is actually renovation.
Renovation, like fixing up a kitchen.
Yes, you're an expert in marketing, and you learn a new software tool for analytics. That's renovation. You are fitting new furniture into existing rooms. You're painting the walls.
It's visible progress. It feels good. Look, I installed a new cabinet.
We're addicted to that feeling of competence. Oh, cool, I could use this right now.
But when you're learning something truly new, that new language or a complex philosophy,
You are not renovating. You are doing construction. You are standing on an empty lot of land.
and before you can build a house, you have to dig a really big, messy hole.
And digging a foundation is miserable work. It's just moving dirt. It doesn't look like a house. It looks like a scar on the ground. It's muddy. It's chaotic. and there's no kitchen to admire.
That is such a vivid image because if you walked onto a construction site during that phase and you didn't know how building works, you'd think they were just destroying the land.
You'd say, where's the house? This is just a mess. That is exactly what your brain is doing. The source details the cognitive process. Your brain is expending massive energy just exploring connections, testing how things fit, hitting dead ends.
It's inefficient by design.
It has to be. You're physically rewiring understanding, and the source uses a phrase I love. Confusion and mental fatigue are the subjective correlates of structural work.
Okay, subjective correlates of structural work. So feeling like my brain is turning to mush isn't a sign that I'm broken.
It's the sweat of the learning process. Confusion is the sensation of the foundation being poured. The problem is we want the roof before we've even dug the hole.
We want the aha moment immediately.
But the aha moment is the roof. That feeling where everything clicks into place, that's the result of the construction phase. You cannot have that moment without the messy, confusing excavation that has to come first.
So if we stop expecting construction to feel like renovation, we stop panicking.
We stop checking the wrong metrics. You wouldn't yell at a construction crew for digging a hole saying, this doesn't look like a kitchen.
Yeah.
We need to grant ourselves that same grace.
Except that the mud phase is part of the job.
Right.
Let's talk about the consequences if we don't get this, because the source implies this isn't just about learning facts, it's about who we become.
It's about identity constriction. If you don't understand that construction must feel hard, you will eventually stop trying to build new things. You'll avoid any domain where you don't feel immediate fluency.
This is how people get boxed in. They just stick to what they're already good at because they're terrified of that feeling of the void.
And we form these distorted self-concepts. I'm a creative, not a technical person. Or I'm a big picture guy. I don't do details.
These aren't descriptions of your potential. They're defense mechanisms.
Yes, they are defense mechanisms to avoid the discomfort of that construction phase. We categorize ourselves to avoid the mud.
And the source points out a really cruel irony here about experts. We look at them and we think they're just built differently. You know, they have math brains or coding brains.
The irony of expertise.
Huh.
This is fascinating. We see an expert physicist solving a problem with ease, and we think, wow, their brain works so fast. But the expert isn't necessarily thinking harder than the novice.
They're just doing renovation.
They're just doing renovation. They built the house 20 years ago. They are walking through rooms they built decades ago, retrieving information from a stable structure.
While the novice is trying to build the structure and solve the problem at the same time.
It's a completely unfair comparison.
Yeah.
We judge our construction against their renovation. It's a recipe for imposter syndrome. We look at their finished house and we hate our hole in the ground.
This perspective shift is huge. It takes the shame out of the struggle. But I want to get practical. How do we actually apply this? The next time I'm staring at a page that makes no sense and I want to quit, what do I actually do?
Well, usually we try to power through with positive self-talk, come on, you can do this, you're smart. But the force suggests a colder, more mechanical approach.
You don't need to believe you're a genius.
You just need to check the blueprint. You just acknowledge the phase you're in. You say, okay, I feel confused, I feel heavy, my brain is foggy. That means I am in the construction phase.
It neutralizes the emotion. It's not a verdict on your soul. It's just the physics of learning.
It rebrands confusion from a sign of failure to a sign of progress. If you aren't confused, you probably aren't learning anything genuinely new.
You're just renovating.
Just rearranging the furniture. Real growth requires the void. Real growth requires the mud.
So we've traveled from the myth of linear progress, the idea that effort should always equal ease, all the way to this model of construction versus renovation.
And the takeaway is that we have to stop fearing the mess. The mess is where the structure is born. We all want the aha moment, but we have to be willing to endure the what the hell is this phase to earn it.
It's invisible progress. Just because you can't see the walls going up doesn't mean the foundation isn't being poured.
Exactly. And once that foundation is set, then you get to move into renovation mode. The aha moment hits, the ease comes, and then you can enjoy the fluency. But you have to survive construction first.
I think this changes how I look at my own past failures, which brings us to a final thought for you to carry with you today.
It's a question worth asking yourself. Think back to a time you tried to learn something and you quit. Piano, maybe, or coding, or some complex part of your job. You quit because it felt too hard, too confusing.
You thought the chaos meant you weren't cut out for it. You thought the hole in the ground was a mistake.
But if you look at it through this lens, how many of those failures were actually just unfinished construction projects?
Yeah.
How many times did you walk off the job site just because it looked like a hole in the ground right before the foundation was about to set?
That's a haunting thought, isn't it? But also a hopeful one, because it means the capacity was there all along. We just misread the blueprint.
We dropped the shovel because we didn't see the house yet. Keep digging, keep building, even though it's just a hole in the ground.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We'll see you on the next one.